So lesson number 2 is emotional signatures. And I sometimes combine this with a discussion on ghosts, but I might split it up into two separate lessons. So lesson 2 is emotional signatures. So what do I mean by that? So we first begin with our emotional states, our feelings. And sometimes we differentiate them into a few distinct groups, like a few distinct feelings: happiness, sadness, fear, anger, disgust. Sometimes there's 6, 7 of these kind of primary emotions or feelings. And even there are some ways that we can find neural pathways possibly that might say that these are the different feeling states. Uh, as all categorizations go, this one also oversimplifies things. And so I think rather than thinking we have a few different types of feelings we can experience, happy, sad, angry, afraid, we can think of those as like primary or main colors, like that would be red, yellow, green, orange. So more than like the three primary colors, but these primary emotional colors. But just like how there are infinite colors that we can make or we can see, there are infinite emotions that we can experience. So there isn't just 6 or 7 feelings you can have. There is a infinite array, kind of like a rainbow of feelings that we can experience. The analogy I kind of think of is, let's say if you can do it on, I think, social media also, but picking a color on a computer, and if you click on the colors, then you can keep moving the thing around, and there's all these gradients of, very, very light red to darker red to purple, and just this infinite array of feelings that we can experience. So, we don't just feel sadness, we might feel a sadness that comes with a sense of relief mixed with a little bit of guilt or a sense of remorse or whatever it might be. And even there's research and writings on how emotional granularity can be important, that the better we are at identifying our feelings in a more granular level, more detailed level, the better we are able to deal with those feelings and those emotions. So the better I can recognize my anger from my outrage, or my anger from my frustration, I'll better be able to deal with those feelings and those emotions. And people differ in how good they are at differentiating between those granular feelings, the really detailed elements of that. So we can see that our emotional experiences are not just a few. We might like to break them up into different categories, but they actually are a whole infinite range of emotional experiences that are possible. And so really most feelings are mixed feelings. And that's a lesson of its own, talking about mixed feelings. But we tend to feel a mix of feelings, but especially when we talk about mixed feelings, this often is our experience when we feel something that makes us want to go towards something and away from something. So in the most basic sense, approach and avoid. So this is why we can feel torn. Okay, I want to go on this job interview, but I'm also anxious about the job interview. So I might want the job, but I'm also anxious about the job interview or getting the job and things that come with it. So I might say I have these mixed feelings. And so we can have them, or we do have them at the same time. I've sometimes heard this notion that, if you're feeling one thing, I heard this about gratitude, kind of to me a quick fix of, okay, well, if you make yourself feel gratitude, or if you focus on gratitude, you can't feel other things. And I don't think that's true at all, but especially it's not true in a larger scale. So even if in one moment you just feel gratitude, you can't only feel that and feel that forever. You're going to feel other things. So there's no erasing feelings or feel one thing and it cancels out something else. You actually can feel gratitude and have complaints about the same thing. And sometimes actually people don't recognize this. They think, well, I can't complain about this thing, I have to be grateful about it. And both things might be true. You might be very grateful for your partner, but it doesn't mean nothing about the relationship bothers you or you have no complaints. They both can be there. So that's the infinite emotional experiences aspects of this lesson. The other part of the where the title comes from, emotional signatures. So just like we have this whole range, infinite range of emotional experiences we can have, included in that, or another aspect of emotional experiences we can have, is the way someone makes us feel. And that's what I call the emotional signature. And that is essentially based on the sum total of your experiences with that individual. How is it that they make you feel? And there's a feeling that you get about them. And so, for example, if you say someone's name, that might trigger that emotional signature of that individual, and you might feel that experience of what they make you feel, how you feel about them, what they mean to you. The whole sum of things gets locked into that emotional signature. And it's something that gets formed over time. So the more you know someone and the more experiences you have with them, all those things start to contribute to that emotional signature. And so because of that, someone you've known longer and had more experiences with and more intimacy with, you will have a more intense emotional signature with them. So someone you just see here and there, there's something you'll feel about them, or when they get triggered for you in whatever way, but it won't be that intense. It will be probably more on the surface. But let's say mother, father, siblings, anyone who's a close friend, husband or wife, children, of course, these individuals will have a more intense and a stronger emotional signature. And it's also stronger in the sense that the longer you've had a relationship with someone and the more it's been built up, of course, one incident or one experience is going to have less of an impact on it, unless it's something huge that could be devastating. Let's say a huge betrayal might cut through a lot of that emotional signature and emotional connection. But generally, you can, let's say, have a husband and wife who have a strong emotional and deep emotional signature for each other, and let's say it's overall very positive and warm. But if they just had a really bad fight, there is this sense that at that moment there will be a tinge of that sadness or that frustration or anger in there as well. So it's a more lasting thing, like a signature, so it has something that's more stable, but there's also dynamic, evolving aspects to it too, short-term kind of aspects to it. You might even have a child. I'll be experiencing this soon myself, and you love them so much, but at this moment they're frustrating you. So your emotional signature for them at that temporary moment might include more of that frustration, but overall have this deep sense of love and adoration and admiration for them. So we can have this emotional signature, or we do have this emotional signature for anyone that we experience and we interact with. Now, I'll tie this in here with, as I was saying, the other lesson, but I'll make it into one about ghosts. And one of our, these experiences that we have of someone's presence, that someone is there, or my dead relative must have been in the room because I felt their presence. I don't know if ghosts are real or not. I personally don't believe in the sense of a spirit being in the room, especially not in the ghost-like way that it's sometimes depicted, that there's a ghost there. To me, it's more about this emotional signature that can be triggered. And so what that means to me is that you can be in your room, and let's say your grandfather has passed away recently, and something triggers that emotional signature for you. It might be something very unconscious. You're thinking about them without realizing you're thinking about them. Let's say a smell, or a some kind of sound, or you see something that reminds you of them, and that emotional signature gets triggered. And now all of a sudden you feel their presence because you are feeling them the way that they make you feel or made you feel. And because of that, there is this intangible. That's usually, people don't say I saw something. Sometimes they say I saw something move, or things like that. But often people have this experience of a presence I felt my grandfather in the room, and it felt so real, you can't tell me otherwise. You can't tell me it wasn't my grandfather there, because I felt them so strong and so deeply. And in that way, I think they're right that they did deeply feel their grandfather's presence. Internally, it doesn't mean they externally had to be in the room, or some kind of spirit had to be in the room. That emotional signature gets triggered, and all of a sudden, I feel that person there. It's different, but it could be just like, let's say, a picture of a loved one. So there it's more intentional and conscious. You look at a picture of a loved one, and all of a sudden your feeling for them comes up. Now here you wouldn't suspect a ghost, because you know you are looking at their picture and thinking of them. But it's the same type of principle, but here it's a unconscious or involuntary type of triggering of that emotional signature, which makes us feel, well, I didn't think about them on purpose. I didn't look at a picture of them, and all of a sudden I feel them. They must be here. I'm reminded of Marcel Proust in Search of Lost Time, his classic long mega novel of 7 volumes, where there's the famous scene of the Madeleine triggering the memories of this individual. Just tasting the Madeleine soaked in tea triggers all these memories. I think of his aunt, and a whole series of memories that then he recounts afterwards. And so there he was in this story able to make that connection between having the soaked cookie, tea soaked cookie, and his aunt, and the memory of having it with her. But if he was not aware that that's why he was thinking of her, he might all of a sudden think, oh, she's with me now, she's in the room now. But it would just be this unconscious triggering of what I would call the emotional signature that was his aunt being brought to his memory. So I can't say this is what everyone experiences every time they say they have a presence, or they think they are feeling the ghost of a loved one. But I think this is one that to me makes sense, because when we feel that emotional signature, it is the feeling we have with them. And so it's hard for us to comprehend any other way that they must be somehow there. And in a way they are, in the sense that when we consider our relationships, and we consider this part of it, I'm calling the emotional signature, it's something that we internally carry of our loved ones all the time. So even if they are alive, we have that. They don't have to be there. And you might think, well, for example, what would my mom say to me right now? Or what would my coach say? People do that. Let's say they're an athlete, and they remember, oh yeah, my coach always said this, and now I carry them with me. I think in some psychological theories, we might call this object relations, or having an internalized object of the individual. But to me, this is another aspect of that, or another way of conceptualizing it, is that feeling of that individual. So even when our loved ones physically are no longer with us, we do emotionally carry them with us. So some of it's that cheesy cliche stuff of they're here with us in spirit, or they're not really gone, and all those things. And you can have religious and spiritual beliefs related to that. But to me, that aspect of it, that you do carry them with you emotionally, is something that is very real. They are still there in that way. And so when I talk about legacy, and I've talked about this, and it might be a lesson of its own, this sense that what we do and how we love others, that will continue, and that should be our legacy, the legacy of our actions, rather than when we try to focus on the legacy of our name, which we won't even be there to enjoy. So you and each of us carries internally the legacy of our loved ones and how they treated us, and that could be a reminder of how we want to treat our own loved ones with love, so that they carry that emotional signature and legacy with them. So lesson 2, emotional signatures and ghosts, recognizing that we experience an infinite range of emotions, and that each individual in our lives gives us a emotional signature, or leaves an emotional signature with us while they're with us, and even afterwards. And that this might help explain some of the experiences that individuals might have when they think they feel the presence of a ghost or spirit of a loved one, is that they are internally have somehow been triggered unconsciously to recall that emotional signature, so they really do feel like they are there. It's not necessarily in spirit externally, but internally in how they're feeling them. All right, let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back.